The sharp, almost violent crack of splintering would rip through the gentle afternoon hum of the park square. Elara's breath hitched, a tiny, wounded sound lost beneath the sudden, awful cacophony. One moment her delicate hand-carved birds, her life's quiet passion, each a whisper of forest song, were perched proudly on their display. The next, they were a tragic cascade of broken wings and shattered dreams, scattered like fallen leaves upon the unforgiving cobblestones. Above the wreckage, a tall, impeccably dressed woman, the architect of this casual destruction, barely paused, her face a mask of cold indifference. She never saw the universe subtly shift its gaze towards her, never imagined that the echoes of her cruelty would boomerang back with astonishing speed, delivering a lesson wrapped in sheer, unexpected karma, all within a handful of heart-stopping minutes. Elara Willow was a woman whose life was etched with the quiet dignity of resilience, her days perfumed by the comforting scent of cedarwood and cherished memories. Her small apartment, bathed in the soft glow of filtered sunlight, was a sanctuary where the gentle spirit of her late husband, Arthur, still seemed to linger. Arthur, a forester with a soul as deep and steadfast as the ancient trees he'd loved, had taught her everything. He'd shown her how to see the hidden life within a block of wood, how to listen for the bird song trapped in the grain. And then, with patient, loving hands, he'd guided her own as she learned to release those tiny, feathered spirits with her carving tools. Each morning, after a simple ritual of tea and a piece of toast, Elara would retreat to her worn wooden workbench. Her fingers, though gnarled by time and work, moved with surprising nimbleness, selecting a piece of seasoned timber with an almost reverent touch. For hours, she would lose herself in the rhythm of her craft, her small, sharp tools whittling, smoothing, defining. These were never just wooden figures. They were exquisite, almost breathing replicas of the birds she and Arthur had adored. There was a cheerful robin, its chest puffed with silent melody, carved from the warm embrace of cherry wood. She remembered Arthur finding a robin with a broken wing when they were young, nursing it back to health in a shoebox by their fireplace. Then the elegant swallow, its wings swept back as if caught in a joyful mid-air dance, emerged from the polished depths of dark walnut, a reminder of the swallows that nested under the eaves of their first cottage. And the wise little owl, its eyes crafted from inlaid pieces of amber that seemed to hold ancient secrets, was always carved from a piece of gnarled oak, just like the old oak tree Arthur had loved to sit beneath in their garden. Each finished creature wasn't just a carving. It was a tribute, a whispered conversation with her beloved, a continuation of their shared story. She sold them at the bustling weekend park market, not for substantial profit. Her modest pension was enough for her simple needs, but for the quiet joy of connection. Her heart warmed to see a child's eyes widen in pure, unadulterated wonder, or to share a knowing smile with an adult who truly saw and appreciated the countless hours of devotion poured into each delicate feather, each tiny, expressive beak. Her stall, small and unassuming, draped with a faded floral cloth Arthur had bought her on their honeymoon decades ago, was her small beacon in the city's whirl, a quiet offering of handmade beauty. The other vendors were her weekend family. There was Ben from the coffee cart, a man whose booming laugh was as warm as the drinks he served, and Mrs. Peterson, whose fragrant handmade soaps perfumed the air around her table. They understood the silent language of creators, the deep satisfaction of shaping something meaningful with one's own hands. This particular Saturday, the park thrummed with a vibrant energy. The air was a cheerful tapestry woven from children's laughter, the distant, soulful melody of a busker saxophone, and the calls of vendors. Elara had just finished her careful setup. Her newest creation, a vibrant bluebird, the color of a perfect summer sky, took pride of place. Its tiny beak was slightly open, as if it were about to release a joyful trill. It had taken her nearly 3 weeks of meticulous work, the delicate feathers etched with an almost impossible precision. Arthur had always said bluebirds were messengers of happiness. Miles away, in a sphere of existence that rarely, if ever, brushed against Elara's gentle world, Veronica Sterling was navigating a morning that was anything but tranquil. Her penthouse apartment, a monument to glass, chrome, and minimalist opulence, offered breathtaking panoramic city views that Veronica, in her perpetual haste, seldom paused to appreciate. She was a whirlwind of ambition, her life a testament to meticulously curated style and an unshakable belief that the world should, and indeed must, bend her schedule and expectations. Today, a particular tension thrummed beneath her polished veneer. She was a chairwoman for the annual Children's Wings of Hope Charity Gala, a glittering, high-profile affair. If Veronica were to be brutally honest with herself, which she rarely was, the gala was less about the actual children and more about cementing her position at the apex of the city's social hierarchy. Her phone, a sleek, expensive device, was practically fused to her ear. She was in her chauffeur car, her voice sharp and clipped as she spoke to her beleaguered assistant, Giles. The ice sculptures for the gala, she insisted, absolutely had to be swans, not doves. Swans, she declared, possessed gravitas. Doves were far too common. She was en route to the park, not for a leisurely stroll, but for a critically important pre-meeting with Mr. Alastair Harrison. Harrison was a renowned philanthropist, a man whose potential seven-figure donation could elevate the gala, and by extension Veronica, into the realm of legend. He was known for his quiet integrity, his discerning eye for genuine artistry, and much to Veronica's mounting anxiety, his unwavering punctuality. She was, predictably, running late. As her driver expertly navigated the congested city streets, Veronica's internal monologue was a symphony of dismissive judgments and simmering impatience. The slow-moving traffic was an affront. The dawdling pedestrians were an irritation. The very air itself seemed to conspire against her meticulously planned day. She muttered under her breath about the sheer audacity of some people, just drifting through life without any discernible sense of urgency or purpose. A glance at her diamond-encrusted watch confirmed her fears. Only 10 minutes to spare. This meeting with Harrison needed to be flawless. His endorsement wasn't merely about the money. It was about the prestige, the invaluable cachet his approval would bestow. The park market, when her car finally deposited her at its edge, was a vibrant, chaotic tapestry of colors, sounds, and smells. For Elara, it was a haven, a place of community and shared joy. For Veronica, it was an infuriating obstacle course, a further impediment to her already delayed schedule. She scanned the bustling pathways with critical, sweeping frown, her expensive Italian leather heels clicking an impatient, staccato rhythm on the uneven cobblestones. She was looking for the designated meeting spot near the Grand Central Fountain, and the throng of shoppers and leisurely browsers was an unwelcome, irritating human barrier. Elara, at that very moment, was lost in a quiet, gentle interaction. A young girl, no older than 6, her nose practically pressed against a display table, was gazing with wide, captivated eyes at the little wooden robin. The child whispered, her voice full of awe, that he looked like he was about to sing. Elara's face softened into a warm smile. She confirmed that he was indeed about to sing, if one listened very carefully. She gently touched the bird's smooth, cherrywood head, inviting the child to smell the faint sweetness of the timber. The girl's mother smiled, a silent, grateful acknowledgment of this small, shared moment of simple pleasure, a brief escape from the city's rush. It was precisely the serene, unassuming scene that Veronica, in her self-absorbed haste, failed to register as anything other than an inconvenient human blockade. Her phone buzzed again, her florist, presenting yet another trivial crisis. She hissed into the receiver for them to just handle it, her eyes darting around, desperately seeking Mr. Harrison. Then she saw it, A perceived gap, a narrow sliver of space between Elara's stall and a large, decorative potted fern. It was undeniably tight, a passage clearly not intended for transit, but Veronica Sterling was not a woman to be deterred by such minor inconveniences or the implied boundaries of others. With an audible sigh of profound exasperation and a dismissive, almost contemptuous wave of her hand, as if shooing away an errant, bothersome fly, she attempted to bull-rush her way through. Her large, structured designer handbag, a recent acquisition that cost more than Elara earned in an entire year of painstaking work, swung out like a pendulum, catching the very edge of Elara's delicately balanced display table. The world seemed to tilt, to slow. The faded floral cloth, Arthur's precious gift, slithered like a startled snake. The little wooden bird, so carefully, lovingly arranged, wobbled precariously for a heartbeat, then cascaded downwards in a horrifying, silent ballet of destruction. The sound, when it came, was sharp, brittle, and utterly final. The sickening crack of splintering wood, the snap of delicate wings, the shatter of tiny beaks against the hard, unforgiving stone. Elara's newest creation, the vibrant bluebird that had taken weeks of her life, the messenger of happiness, landed with a particularly tragic thud, its tiny form now irrevocably broken, its promise of song silenced. Elara gasped, a small, wounded animal sound. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes, usually so bright with quiet joy, widening in disbelief, then clouding with a dawning, deep and visceral ache. She sank to her knees, her body trembling uncontrollably, her hands hovering protectively over the devastating scene. It wasn't just merchandise. It was her time, her memories, her very heart, her precious connection to Arthur, all lying in ruins at her feet. Each broken piece, each splintered feather, felt like a tiny shard embedding itself directly into her own spirit. Veronica, however, barely broke her stride. She had felt the bump, registered the commotion peripherally, but her primary concern remained her own trajectory, her own pressing schedule. A flicker of annoyance crossed her face. Oh, for heaven's sake, she thought, what now? She half-turned, her expression one of utter exasperation, entirely devoid of remorse or concern. She saw the elderly woman kneeling, the scattered crafts, an inconvenience, a delay. She fumbled impatiently in her expensive purse, her perfectly manicured fingers extracting a crumpled $20 bill and a 10. She thrust a meager sum towards Elara, her gaze deliberately averted, her voice cold-clipped and dripping with condescension. This, she stated, should cover it. Then, with an added layer of disdain, she remarked that, honestly, you people should be more careful where you set up these things. The implication was brutally clear. Elara, the victim of her carelessness, was somehow to blame for being in Veronica's imperious path. Veronica was already mentally recalibrating, thinking about Mr. Harrison, about the potential damage to her Italian leather heels from whatever debris might now be on the ground. Elara was too stunned, too deeply wounded, to articulate a single word. The $30 lay untouched on the cobblestones, a stark, insulting juxtaposition beside a broken robin's wing. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and blurring, transforming the scene of destruction into a wavering, painful watercolor. Other vendors, alerted by the sound and the palpable shift in atmosphere, had turned. Ben from the coffee cart, his usual jovial expression replaced by a grimace of shock and simmering anger, took a protective step towards Elara, the young mother, the one whose child had been so entranced by the birds, her face flushed with indignation, spoke up, her voice trembling slightly but firm. That was incredibly careless. She began and utterly rude. Veronica shot the young mother a withering glare, a look so icy, so dismissive. It could freeze words in the throat. She declared that she really didn't have time for this, then turned sharply on her heel and strode a short distance away, towards a designated meeting point by the fountain, to await Mr. Harrison. She meticulously smoothed down her silk blouse, took a deep, composing breath to regain her manufactured composure, and attempted to put the unpleasant little incident firmly out of her mind. Or so she fervently hoped. Behind her, Elara, with tears now tracing slow, sorrowful paths down her weathered cheeks, began to slowly, painstakingly gather the broken remains of her beautiful, beloved birds. Her shoulders, usually held so straight despite her age and the burden she carried, were slumped in utter defeat. The vibrant, cheerful energy of the market seemed to dim around her small, sorrowful figure. Each fractured piece she picked up, each splintered wing, was a fresh, agonizing stab of pain. The bluebird, Arthur's messenger of happiness, was in 3 pieces. Veronica tapped her expensive shoe impatiently against the cobblestones, her gaze fixed with unwavering intensity on the park entrance. Mr. Harrison was now officially unforgivably late, and her meticulously planned schedule, her carefully constructed narrative for the meeting, was unraveling thread by thread. She pulled out her phone, her thumb hovering over her assistant's contact number, a sigh of theatrical frustration escaping her lips. She was about to dial when her assistant's call came through. Mr. Harrison, her assistant reported in a calm, professional voice, had called. He had been slightly delayed by unexpected, severe traffic on the bridge. He sent profound apologies and assured her he was no more than 10 minutes away. 10 minutes, Veronica echoed internally, her voice tight with suppressed irritation. 10 more minutes of standing here, feeling exposed, agitated, and increasingly out of control. She detested waiting. It made her feel powerless, a sensation she actively avoided at all costs. She began to pace a small, confined area near the fountain. The earlier incident with the vendor momentarily eclipsed by the more pressing anxiety of her impending meeting with Mr. Harrison. She mentally reviewed her carefully rehearsed notes, the key phrases designed to impress, the subtle, persuasive ways she would steer the conversation toward a generous, 7-figure pledge to the children's wings of hope. This donation was crucial. It was in that precise moment, as she turned, distracted by an imaginary speck of dust on her designer handbag, that it happened. A young man on a bicycle, appearing as if from nowhere, materializing from the throng of market-goers, zipped past her with startling speed. In a movement so swift, so sudden it was almost invisible, he snatched her handbag right off her shoulder. The strap, thin and elegant but no match for force, snapped with soft, tearing sound that seemed to echo in the sudden, stunned silence. A cry escaped Veronica's lips, more a gasp of surprise than a shout of alarm. Then the full, horrifying reality crashed down upon her. "My bag!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Stop him! He stole my bag!" Her voice, usually so controlled, so modulated, so carefully pitched, rose to a shrill note of genuine, unadulterated panic. The thief, agile and terrifyingly quick, was already weaving expertly through the startled shoppers, a dark, indistinct blur disappearing around a bend in the path, swallowed by the crowd. Veronica stood, utterly aghast, one hand clutching her shoulder where the bag had been just seconds before. Her meticulously polished composure shattered like fragile, antique glass. Her phone, her wallet stuffed with credit cards and cash, her car keys, the meticulously prepared notes from Mr. Harrison, and a small, antique silver locket, a precious, irreplaceable heirloom her grandmother had given her, all gone. Her perfectly ordered, carefully controlled world had just been violently, brutally upended. "My bag!" She cried again, looking around wildly, her eyes wide with raw fear and a desperate helplessness she hadn't felt since she was a child. "Please, someone help me." The carefully constructed facade of Veronica Sterling, the powerful, unflappable titan of industry and society, had crumbled, revealing someone suddenly, terrifyingly vulnerable, small, and utterly alone. Elara, her apron now a makeshift cradle for the heartbreaking collection of broken wings and splintered wooden bodies, had just managed to rise shakily to her feet. The raw, throbbing ache in her heart was still fresh. The image of Veronica's dismissive, cruel face burned vividly into her mind. Yet, when she heard that scream, that pure, unadulterated terror in that very same voice, something profound and unexpected shifted within her. Her own deep, personal pain, for a fleeting, instinctive second, was overshadowed by the universal, primal distress of someone victimized, someone in crisis. Despite the callous cruelty she had just endured, Elara's first instinct wasn't a surge of vindictive pleasure, nor was it cold indifference. It was a flicker, almost imperceptible, of something akin to shared human empathy. She looked up, her gaze still misty with her own unshed tears, following the direction of the commotion. Veronica, in her escalating panic, was spinning in small, agitated circles, her pleas for help becoming more frantic, more desperate. But Elara, her senses perhaps sharpened by her own recent shock, her artist eye trained to notice the smallest details, observed something small, something easily missed in surrounding chaos. As the thief had rounded a dense, thorny cluster of rose bushes, a flash of bright, distinctive color had fallen to the ground, a single neon green cycling glove. Ben, the kind-hearted coffee vendor, who had witnessed Veronica's earlier callousness with grim, silent disapproval, also saw the theft unfold. His innate sense of neighborhood justice, his protective instinct for the market community, immediately kicked in. He yelled out that he would see if he could catch the culprit, already starting to run, his larger frame moving with surprising speed and agility as he navigated the startled crowds. But the thief was young, on a bicycle, and had a significant, almost insurmountable head start. Veronica was near tears now, her carefully applied, waterproof mascara threatening to streak, her face pale and drawn. Her entire life, she wailed at anyone who would listen, her voice choked with a desperation that was entirely, shockingly genuine, was in that bag. The sudden, violent loss of control, the abrupt stripping away of her power and possessions, was a torment far greater, far more profound, than the mere monetary value of the stolen items. It was then that Elara, still clutching her apron full of broken dreams and shattered memories, slowly, hesitantly, began to make her way towards a distraught, unraveling woman. Her steps were uncertain, her own heart still heavy with its recent burden. When she reached Veronica, her voice was soft, still a little shaky from her own ordeal. "Ma'am," she began, her tone gentle. Veronica, lost in her own vortex of panic, barely registered Elara's presence, her eyes still scanning the crowd with frantic, searching intensity. "Ma'am," Elara repeated, her voice a fraction louder, imbued with a quiet insistence. "He dropped this." She pointed a trembling finger toward the base of the thorny rose bushes, where the neon green glove lay like a discarded, brightly colored piece of fallen foliage. And, she added, her voice still soft but clear, "he went that way." She gestured toward the less used, slightly overgrown path, leading toward the old, disused boathouse at the far edge of the park. She offered the information simply, factually, without a trace of malice, without a hint of triumph or retribution. It was just an observation, an act of simple, uncalculated human decency. Just as Veronica registered Elara's words, turned to stare at the bright green glove with a dawning, desperate flicker of hope, a distinguished, silver-haired gentleman approached the small, agitated group that had gathered around the fountain. He had a kind, intelligent face, and his eyes, though currently filled with palpable concern, held a deep, intrinsic warmth. It was, of course, Mr. Alistair Harrison. "Veronica," he inquired, his voice calm but laced with genuine surprise as he took in the disquieting scene. Veronica, pale, disheveled, her usual impeccable poise completely gone. Elara, standing quietly nearby, her apron looking oddly, poignantly bulky, and the bright, incongruous glove lying on the ground. Good heavens, he asked, what on earth has happened here? Veronica, flustered and caught completely off guard by his arrival amidst such utter chaos, struggled visibly to compose herself. Mr. Harrison, she stammered, her voice thin and reedy. My bag. It was just stolen. Snatched right off my shoulder. She gestured vaguely, almost dismissively, towards Elara. And this woman, she saw something. She was about to revert to her default mode of dismissal, to wave Elara away as insignificant. But then a strange, unsettling realization dawned, hitting her with the force of an epiphany. Elara, the humble vendor she had treated so abominably, so cruelly, just minutes before, had just tried to help her. The thought was so incongruous, so utterly contrary to her worldview, it momentarily silenced her. Before Veronica could fully process this jarring thought or gather her scattered wits, Ben, the coffee vendor, returned, breathless, flushed, and shaking his head in frustration. No luck, I'm afraid, he reported, his chest heaving. He was too fast. But, he added, offering a sliver of hope, I did see him jump onto a bus, number 42, heading downtown. I think I got a partial plate. He rattled off a few letters and numbers, which Mr. Harrison noted down with surprising quickness in a small leather-bound notebook. Mr. Harrison listened intently, his gaze then shifting from Veronica's distraught, tear-streaked face to Elara. He looked at her properly now, truly saw her kind, tired eyes, the quiet sorrow etched around her mouth, and then down the apron she was holding so carefully, so protectively. He saw a glint of polished wood, the familiar, heartbreaking curve of a broken wing. His brow furrowed slightly in concern, then a look of sudden, dawning recognition, mixed with gentle, warm surprise, softened his features. Elara, he said, his voice taking on a new note of warmth, of deep, personal familiarity. Elara Willow, is that you? Elara looked up, startled to be addressed so personally, by name, by this distinguished, unfamiliar gentleman. Yes, she replied, her voice barely a whisper, laced with confusion. My dear Elara, Mr. Harrison said, a genuine, heartfelt smile crinkling the corners of his eyes, a smile that reached deep into his kind gaze. I haven't seen you since, well, it must have been Arthur's service, all those many years ago. Your husband, Arthur Willow, he continued, his voice imbued with sincere respect, was a great man, a true craftsman with a deep and gentle soul. He often spoke of your incredible, unique talent with these birds. In fact, he paused, a reminiscent, faraway look in his eyes. He gifted me one of your remarkable creations many, many years ago, a beautiful little bluebird. I still treasure it. It sits on my desk to this very day, a constant reminder of true artistry and enduring friendship. Veronica stared, utterly, completely dumbfounded. Her jaw literally dropped. The common vendor, the obstacle she had so carelessly, so cruelly dismissed just minutes before, was not only known but deeply, personally respected by Alastair Harrison, the very man whose good opinion she so desperately craved, whose approval was a cornerstone of her current ambitions. The world seemed to spin, her carefully constructed reality tilting on its axis. Mr. Harrison's gaze then fell properly, with focused attention, upon the tragic contents of Elara's apron. He saw the splintered wood, the snapped wings, the unmistakable, heartbreaking forms of her beautiful birds, now broken and lifeless. His warm smile faded instantly, replaced by an expression of profound concern, and then, as his gaze flickered from the ruined crafts to Veronica's suddenly guilt-stricken, ashen face, a flicker of quiet, profound disapproval. He was an astute man, a keen observer of human nature, and the unspoken pieces of the troubling narrative began to click rapidly, chillingly into place. He remembered seeing Veronica gesture dismissively, imperiously, as they approached a woman kneeling amidst scattered items. "What happened here, Elara?" he asked gently, his eyes searching hers for truth, his voice soft but firm. Elara, ever discreet, ever reluctant to cause a scene or further embarrass anyone, even someone who had wronged her so deeply, simply shook her head slightly. "Just an accident, Mr. Harrison," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "A rather clumsy one, I'm afraid." Her gaze flickered toward Veronica, a hint of her earlier pain, her deep hurt still visible in her tired eyes. But the young mother, the one whose daughter had so admired Elara's little Robin, had witnessed the entire shocking exchange. Emboldened by Mr. Harrison's kind, approachable demeanor and Elara's quiet, unwavering dignity, she stepped forward, her chin held high. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice clear and firm, cutting through the charged atmosphere. "It wasn't just an accident. This lady," she gestured directly, unequivocally at Veronica, deliberately and carelessly knocked Mrs. Willow's entire table over. The birds went everywhere. They shattered, and the young mother continued, her voice ringing with righteous indignation, was incredibly, unbelievably rude about it. She barely offered a pittance, a truly insulting sum, for the extensive damage, and then even had the audacity to try and blame Mrs. Willow for her own recklessness. Veronica flushed a deep, painful, mortifying crimson. The air grew thick, heavy with unspoken accusations and the crushing, suffocating weight of her own callous, indefensible behavior. There was no escape, no plausible deniability. The truth was out, laid bare, exposed in front of the one person whose judgment, at that moment, mattered more to her than anyone else's in the world. The karma she had so blithely, so arrogantly invited wasn't dramatic thunderbolt from a vengeful sky. It was a quiet, devastating disappointment in Mr. Alastair Harrison's discerning eyes, and the sudden, crushing, soul-searing realization of her own profound, unthinking unkindness. Her grand, ambitious plans for the gala, her meticulously constructed image of herself as a benevolent community leader, all felt as fragile, as irrevocably broken, as Elara's little wooden birds. Mr. Harrison looked from a heartbreaking, poignant collection of shattered birds cradled in Elara's apron to Veronica, his expression shifting from surprise to a deep, profound disappointment that was far more damning than any outburst of anger could ever have been. For a long, heavy moment, he said nothing, simply allowing the weight of the young mother's courageous words and Veronica's visible, palpable shame to fill the uncomfortable silence. Then he spoke, his voice quiet but carrying an undeniable, resonant authority. "Veronica," he said, the earlier warmth he had shown her completely extinguished, replaced by a cool, measured disapproval. "The charity gala you are chairing, Children's Wings of Hope, I believe it is called?" He paused, letting the name, with all its inherent symbolism, hang heavy and meaningful in the air. "The irony," he continued, his gaze unwavering, penetrating, "is not lost on me." He then turned his full, undivided attention back to Elara, his face softening instantly with genuine, heartfelt compassion. "Elara," he said, his voice gentle, were magnificent." He reached out a careful, respectful hand, lightly, tenderly touching a broken wing of a small sparrow. Arthur would have been so incredibly proud. He always said you possessed a rare magic in your touch, that you could find the very soul hidden within the wood. A flicker of a sad, wistful smile touched Elara's lips, a brief glimmer of warmth amidst her sorrow. "He was always my greatest encouragement, my staunchest believer, Mr. Harrison," she acknowledged softly. "My dear Elara," Mr. Harrison said, his voice filled with an encouraging kindness that seemed to embrace her, "I would be deeply honored to purchase whatever you have left that remains undamaged." And perhaps you would consider a special commission. I am hosting an important event for my own foundation next month. I would love for you to create a centerpiece, something truly unique, something that speaks of resilience, of beauty emerging from hardship, of hope taking flight. Would that be something you might possibly consider? Elara's eyes would have been clouded with sorrow and unshed tears, now filled with fresh moisture. But this time, they were tears of utter astonishment, of overwhelming gratitude, of a bright, unexpected light piercing her profound gloom. "Oh, Mr. Harrison," she stammered, her voice thick with emotion, words failing her. That is far too kind. I would be truly, deeply honored." Veronica stood frozen, a statue of mortification. The loss of her expensive handbag and its precious contents was momentarily, completely eclipsed by the searing, public humiliation of this profound reckoning. She saw Elara then, truly saw her for the first time, not as an anonymous, inconvenient vendor, an irritating obstacle in her path, but as a woman of immense quiet grace, of extraordinary talent, of profound, unassuming dignity. A woman intrinsically connected to a world of integrity and genuine artistry, a world Veronica herself had just carelessly, callously, irrevocably trampled upon. The sting of her actions, amplified 1,000-fold by Mr. Harrison's quiet, dignified condemnation and his profound, immediate kindness toward Elara, hit her with the force of a physical blow. A choked, almost inaudible sound escaped her lips. I am so terribly, deeply sorry, Elara," Veronica managed, her voice barely a whisper, raw with a shame she had never before experienced. It was, perhaps, the first truly sincere, uncalculated, and heartfelt utterance she had made all day. Her gaze dropped to the broken birds, her face etched with profound regret that felt new, alien, and deeply uncomfortable. "There is no excuse, none whatsoever, for my behavior. I was awful, unforgivable." She looked up, her eyes meeting Elara's tear-filled, forgiving gaze. "Please," she implored, "let me pay for all the damage, properly, and for your time, for the unique artistry that I so carelessly, so thoughtlessly destroyed." Elara looked at Veronica, truly looked at her, beyond expensive clothes, beyond the arrogant, brittle facade. She saw the raw, unvarnished shame, the nascent, flickering regret, the visible humbling of a human being brought face to face with her own failings. After a long, contemplative moment, a moment filled with the silent weight of all that had transpired, Elara gave a small, hesitant, almost imperceptible nod. Forgiveness wasn't easy, it wasn't instantaneous, but her heart, though bruised and aching, was not irrevocably closed. Mr. Harrison observed this fragile, tentative exchange, his expression thoughtful, discerning. He didn't berate Veronica further. The situation itself, and her own awakening conscience, seemed to be doing that far more effectively, far more profoundly, than any further words from him could achieve. But his message, his stance, had been unequivocally, powerfully delivered. Regarding the stolen bag, Mr. Harrison spoke calmly, practically. "We will, of course, report the theft to the park authorities and the police immediately. Veronica, Ben's information about the bus and the partial plate will undoubtedly be helpful." He paused and added, his tone carrying a subtle but clear, pointed emphasis. "Material things, as you well know, can often eventually be replaced. Reputations, however, and the precious trust of good, decent people are far, far harder to mend." His words, though gently spoken, landed with the precision of a perfectly aimed arrow, a final, quiet underscoring of the day's painful, but ultimately necessary lessons. In the aftermath of the profound confrontation, a strange, almost reverent quiet settled over the little group by the fountain. Veronica, stripped bare of her usual arrogance, felt a wave of humility wash over her. so profound and unfamiliar it was almost dizzying. Without a single word, she bent down, her movements awkward and unaccustomed, and began to help Elara carefully, gently pack the few remaining intact birds into a spare, sturdy box Ben thoughtfully fetched from his coffee cart. She handled the broken pieces, the splintered wings and shattered forms, with a newfound reverence that was startlingly, visibly new. Her expensive, perfectly polished manicure now smudged with dust and tiny with splinters. She then took out her checkbook. Thankfully, it had been in her coat pocket, not the stolen handbag, and wrote a check to Elara Willow. The amount was significantly more than the mere monetary value of the damaged crafts. It was a desperate, fumbling attempt, however inadequate she knew it to be, to compensate for the hurt, the disrespect, the wanton destruction of beauty. She included a short, handwritten note, the words simple but heartfelt. It read, "I am truly, deeply sorry. Your work is beautiful, and I was blind." Mr. Harrison, true to his word and his character, not only confirmed his generous commission for several new, significant pieces from Elara, but also made a quiet, discreet call to the park's superintendent. He spoke with gentle but undeniable authority about the pressing need for better, more secure, and more respectful display units for the dedicated artisans who brought so much life, beauty, and soul to the public space. His philanthropy, it became clear, extended far beyond grand, glittering galas to the everyday, practical support of community treasures like Elara. He also addressed his intended donation to the Children's Wings of Hope Gala. He would still contribute. He informed a deeply chastened and profoundly changed Veronica, but with a new, non-negotiable condition: that a significant portion of the donation be used to establish an ongoing initiative specifically supporting local artists and craftspeople, particularly those from underserved communities or those, like Elara, whose quiet talents often went unnoticed. He suggested, pointedly but kindly, that the very first recipient and prominent feature of this new initiative should be, without question, Elara Willow. A few days later, in a surprising but welcome turn of events, Veronica's stolen handbag was recovered. An alert transit police officer, remembering the circulated description and the partial plate number Ben had so diligently provided, spotted the distinctive designer bag discarded beneath a seat on the number 42 bus. The cash was gone as expected, but her important documents, her keys, and most miraculously, the antique silver locket from her grandmother were still safely inside. Yet its return felt almost anticlimactic, strangely muted. The real recovery, the one that truly mattered, the one that resonated deep within her, was already happening, slowly but surely, within Veronica herself. The shocking, humiliating encounter in the park had been a harsh, unwelcome mirror, reflecting an image of herself she no longer recognized, no longer wished to embody. Slowly, tentatively, with faltering steps, Veronica began to change. She started to see people not as assets or obstacles in her path, not as means to an end, but simply as people, each with their own unique story, their own hidden struggles, their own quiet, intrinsic worth. The following Saturday, much to Elara's general surprise, Veronica appeared at her market stall, not as a patronizing customer, but as a quiet, respectful helper. She spent the entire afternoon learning about the different types of wood, the intricate, painstaking process of carving, and most importantly, listening intently to Elara's gentle stories of Arthur, of nature, of finding beauty in small things. It was a fragile, tentative beginning of an unlikely, unexpected connection, a delicate bridge built across a vast chasm of class, temperament, and past hurts. For Elara, the incident, though initially devastating and heartbreaking, brought an unexpected, profound revitalization. Mr. Harrison's generous commission and the subsequent, genuine interest from Veronica's newly established arts initiative filled her with a renewed sense of purpose, a fresh creative energy. She even began teaching a small, popular wood carving class at the local community center. Her patient, encouraging guidance, inspiring a new generation of creators to find their own voices in wood. Her circle of connection, once small and quiet, began to widen, bringing new warmth, new friendships, and a vibrant new light into her life. Months later, as the autumn leaves began to turn vibrant shades of gold and crimson, Elara and Veronica could often be found sharing a quiet cup of tea from Ben's cart at the park market. Veronica, now a genuine admirer of Elara's artistry and, slowly, surprisingly, a developing friend, would listen intently as Elara spoke of her latest creations, her eyes shining with newfound, softer light. The air around them, once fraught with tension, misunderstanding, and unspoken judgment, was now filled with a comfortable, easy hum of shared stories, gentle laughter, and the distant, joyful chirping of real birds in the park trees, their songs a hopeful melody. It was a testament to quiet, persistent, transformative power of kindness, and the unexpected, often surprising ways the universe offers second chances, pathways of redemption. Sometimes a devastating fall can indeed lead to an unexpected, triumphant flight. Sometimes shattered pieces, when met with genuine empathy, humility, and a courageous willingness to change, can be mended into something even more beautiful, more profound, revealing that the truest, most meaningful karma isn't about punishment or retribution, but about the precious, often difficult, and ultimately rewarding opportunity to grow a kinder, more understanding, and more deeply connected heart.